Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Buffnagel the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Buffnagel the podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Zach, and we got a great show today. We're actually taking a listener question we got a couple weeks back, and we're diving a little deeper into that. However, because you don't want to hear me ramble on for 40 minutes by myself, I'll have Rafe ramble on with me for 40 minutes. So, Rafe, how you doing?
Hey, Zach, I am fantastic. It's great to be here again. It is spring is starting to arrive here in the great state of Tennessee. Our daffodils are blooming. I'm sure your snow is nearly all gone up there, or they're probably big piles of it in your parking lot, I would guess, something like that. But it's a great day here in Tennessee, and it always is doing a podcast with you. I need to thank all our listeners. Again, this is we do this kind of thing for you. Without you, we're just talking to the walls or to anybody that'll listen. And but you guys give us purpose and desire to make sure we don't waste your time. So we're going to get right on with this. As always, you can contact us at buffnagel@buffnagel.com or legal@buffnagel.com. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, any place you find podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, all sorts of other places. If there's a place you want to listen to us on, then let us know and we'll figure out how to get the podcast up there. If you are new to our podcast, welcome. Thanks for coming. We're glad you are here. We're going to ask you to give us a number of episodes and come back weekly for a couple weeks in a row and see if any of the different things we're talking about resonate with you. Give us 4 episodes and we'll give you a reason to come back for some more. And remember, tell a friend to listen and we will give you a free episode. And news here, Zach, I'm sure you've heard this and you were part of the discussions here, is that Buffnagel is looking to grow our little Buffnagely team. We are looking for a helper to make us sound good and look even better. So send us your information, your CV, your resume, your an essay from 7th grade on Millard Fillmore, whatever you want to send us. Send us something. We'll look at it and we'll look at what you can do and maybe how you could fit in with us. We're looking for somebody particularly to help us with some of these technological issues. We're having a little technical issue today, and we're going to hopefully not have that be a problem. But other than that, Zach, we are ready to roll. I hear we have a big brain, smart head guest in the studio with us today.
We do have a big brain, smart head guest of the week. It's someone we have known for about 15 years, rounded up to the nearest 15, who's one of the smartest people I know. He went to high school with me, which is unfortunate for him, and then he decided to go and meet smarter people than me at college, where he went to Harvey Mudd in California. He then worked for Google, and then he decided to move across the country and work for Apple, which is the reason this podcast is on Apple Podcast. And so with all of that said, Eli, you're our big brain smart head of the week. How are you doing? And welcome onto the podcast.
Thanks, Zach. I'm doing well. It's a sunny day here in DC, and I'm really excited to be here. Like you said, yeah, I've known you guys for a few years now. Kind of reconnected a few years back. I've just been having a great time hanging out and playing games with y'all.
Well, that sounds great. I need to mention this. So Eli, with his connections back at Apple, he pulled the strings and got our podcast on there because it didn't pass any of the rigor of the Apple podcast machine. But, Eli knows, what do they say? It's not what you know, it's who you know. And thanks, Eli, for getting us going. You're here to talk to us about esports, and that was the topic of the question. And this is a thing that, for those of us in a slightly older generation than you guys, this is something that is kind of different. It's the kind of thing that we never see ourselves doing, but I think a lot of you could you could let us know that this is actually it's a real thing. People do it, and it's not a lot different than watching a baseball game on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, so esports, competitive gaming, lots of different things. The main trend here is kind of a multiplayer online competition. There's all kinds of different genres of games. You've got shooting games, you've got sports games, really a whole bunch of different stuff. I can kind of speak a little bit about my background, my history with esports, I guess. I'm far from ever been competitive or professional, but I kind of came into League of Legends was a game in the early 2010s that gained a lot of popularity. It's what you call a multiplayer online battle arena, a MOBA game they call them. Basically, you've got to drop a big group of two teams of five into an arena. Everyone's got their own unique character, their own unique abilities, and you're trying to basically outsmart and beat the opponent. So I kind of picked this up with some friends, and we were just playing for fun. None of us were very good, but it's all about having fun. And then transitioned that into actually starting to watch the pro scene that was starting to build up. So you had people who played this for a living. I mean, this was their full-time job. Typically not much older than we were at the time.
So those of us who are, like I said, in the older generation, this is a very new thing, and it is a little bit contrary to how a lot of us think about video games. Back in the day, if I wanted to play the latest video game, I would go stand in line at CompUSA, and I would buy a box. In the box would be a CD or some diskettes. I would load it onto my computer, and I would play the game. And then came the internet, and you could play the game if it was internet compatible. You could play with somebody else somewhere across the world, hopefully. But now it's a whole, you don't even buy the game anymore, right? It sits on a server. You download a license or how does all of that work? How do you get into that? Can you make your own team? Can you exclude, like if I want to have a team, but I want to exclude Zach, can I do, I mean, how does all that work?
Yeah, for sure. So like you said, the internet really revolutionized the whole gaming industry. You don't have to go buy the physical disc anymore. You can download it over the internet. And especially for a lot of the things that people play as esports kind of competitively, they're actually often free games to start. You can download the game and play for free without ever putting any money into it. They typically have a monetization model around you can choose to buy cosmetics and kind of non-game affecting stuff that makes you look cooler, and that's how you spend real money.
So you can buy these pieces, like I can buy like a helmet with horns on it, or I can buy a T-shirt
Exactly.
that says Buff Niggle Esports on it, or something like that.
Precisely. Yeah, they've all kind of the options are unbelievable. It's just so much depth choice,
Okay,
and it's all
okay.
cosmetic.
Right. It doesn't, and you're saying so it doesn't affect the gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear that companies can put advertising in these games, even like political advertising in some of these online games. So you'll be running around and you'll see a Donald Trump ad or you see a Joe Biden ad in the background. Is that really a thing?
Yeah, I've seen that with a game called Animal Crossing, which is kind of a farming sim that has a whole system where users can create their own clothes and signs and that kind of stuff and to share it out. And I did see some stuff around political campaigns taking advantage of that and brands taking advantage of that, Nike, that kind of thing. I think Animal Crossing politely asked them to stop doing that. But you'll see advertising in esports as well, such as League of Legends. I've seen they'll like overlay sponsorship companies into the world of the game, so you'll see that floating around.
So would that be a highly expensive thing to do? It'd be kind of thing that probably is outside of the realm of the Buff Nagel advertising and marketing budget.
I mean, I think the Animal Crossing thing was fairly low entry cost, but for the professional esports League of Legends stuff, you might have a little bit of a budget constraint there.
Can we just sponsor like a smaller end tournament, like the Buff Nagel Invitational?
You can set up your own tournament. That's the whole grassroots world of esports.
All right, that's fantastic. Okay, so you're talking about some professional things, and you've mentioned a couple games here. In conversations I had with Zach earlier this week in our pre-production meeting, um, he mentioned that there's a handful of games that are, I guess, considered elite or tier one or major league kind of thing. Is what are those games?
Yeah, so I would say if I had to pick kind of the top handful, I think League of Legends is up there. I think Fortnite is obviously impossible to not mention in that world. Um, oh man, Dota 2 is maybe a little less popular, but definitely up there. Counter-Strike Global Offensive is a huge one for shooter games. Overwatch is big. I mean, the list goes on, and you're always going to miss something that someone thinks is really popular and good. But those are definitely some of the big ones, and those break down into a few different genres too, which I think is kind of interesting to
Yes,
mention.
and you mentioned about the genres. So you talked about like so. Basically, the idea is there's this anybody can sign in, and there's games going on all the time in the general sense, right? So the three of us could get together and we could jump into it, and we could we pick up we pick up Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes to join our team, right? And then we go play a game. Is that how it works? You kind of you queue it up? Is that what happens?
Yeah, exactly. So you get in, you can form what they call a party typically, which is the idea of you and a couple friends grouping together and saying, we definitely want to play together. So, like, the three of us can make a party. And then the games will always have constraints on how many people they can handle. So, like League of Legends, we'll use, for example, is 5 versus 5. So you can't queue into 3 versus 5. That wouldn't make any sense. So you'll enter the matchmaking queue, and they'll go find two other people to join your team, hopefully around the same skill level, and they'll find 5 opponents to join as well. So the goal for all these matches is to constantly find people that are about the same competitive level, and thus your chance of winning is 50-50-ish.
So, do I would guess I develop skill as the game goes on. Do my characters grow and get like bigger and stronger, and I have to sign in then with an account, or how does can I just
Typically,
get? How's that work?
yeah. So typically not actually. These games are often the whole idea is that you're kind of starting from a clean slate every time because you'll play. It varies by length, but anything from like a 10-minute competition to maybe 45 minutes or an hour. And each time you queue into a new match, you are all kind of at the same starting point, and that way it doesn't matter if someone has played 1,000 hours in the game. They don't have like a constructed advantage in the game. They have the experiential advantage, obviously, but they don't have something that just because they've played more, they're better at it. They might have more cosmetics, but
Yeah. So this is a really when the video games really came up into being is when you guys were little, all right, and as a parent it was I always looked at these games, and I didn't really like the games where it was just Zach against Harry. That was because you always had a winner and you always had a loser, and I was always looking for games that would allow people to be teammates together. I always imagine like the Lewis and Clark game. Okay, you got to row up the Missouri or something like that.
I don't
But
think anyone would want to play that.
yeah, well, you go along the way, you pick up Sacagawea, you pick up Charbonneau, you go meet somebody in the woods, you trade for horses, you eat candles, all those fun things. But so the rise of these multiple member online games, whatever they're called, that to me seems like a real boon to the development of these games to allow collaborative, cooperative play. And it's like a gigantic playground with tons of pickup games going around all the time. But there's also like professional leagues, right? And that's the big esport money thing, right?
absolutely, yeah. No, I think you've hit on really two interesting topics there. So for one, the kind of transition from single player 1 versus 1 to teams, and then even in the past 4 or 5 years, we've actually had this new genre called the battle royale. Um, which is so let me kind of walk it back there. So back in like the 90s and 2000s, you had a lot of games that were 1 versus 1. So StarCraft was a really popular game where it was you versus an opponent, just get going. And then we kind of moved into this team based, and a lot of this I'm sure has to do with network getting better, internet getting better, and being able to support that. So like League of Legends, Counter Strike, these are all 5 versus 5. Um, just keep play as a team, and that really adds a lot of dimension as well because it's not just you versus someone else. It's how can you collaborate with your teammates and really outsmart and kind of work together better. And then in I want to say 2017 was PUBG, Player Unknown's Battleground. Just not kind of an interesting game name, but it got the job done, and it really introduced this idea and made popular this idea of a battle royale game, which really you think of the Hunger Games is probably like the best analogy. And the idea is that you drop in number of players into an arena together, and there's one winner. Last person standing wins. So with, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, that's so you could have like, are you talking like hundreds of people in there, and they're just like all beating each other up, and eventually you get down to a handful of guys, and is that?
Yeah. So typically 64 to 100 is I think the numbers you'll see for a lot of these games. PUBG started it. They didn't start it, but they kind of made it popular for the first time. Fortnite is the same genre. It's just an evolution of PUBG. And then we've seen this really fascinating transition to non-shooting games, non-combat games that are also using this battle royale model. So both PUBG and Fortnite are going to be, drop into a world and shoot guns and kill people and win kind of thing. And now we've got like Tetris 99, where you have 100 people playing Tetris against each other, and there's one winner. And it's a really fascinating model.
Wait. So okay, so I want to talk about that because for me, as an older guy, looking at people beating each other up and shooting each other and slashing each other with swords, eventually you're like, maybe that's not the best thing for people to be doing. But it's sure better to do it in video than in real life. But you say they play Tetris at the same time. It's like everybody's throwing blocks into the thing at the same. How does that work?
Absolutely, yeah. So Tetris 99, basically, when you clear a line, you send it to someone
To
else.
somebody.
Yep, and you
Yeah.
can control who you're targeting. You can attack people who are attacking you. So if a bunch of people see you getting high, like having not much space left, they'll start attacking you and sending you their junk.
And they'll push you off.
Yeah.
Pushes you out of the game.
Exactly.
We have that. We don't have Tetris 99. We have Tetris 4. We have a version for the Xbox that we got a zillion years ago, and you can play what, 3 or 4, Zach, at the same time.
4 people total.
Yeah, and you can send it either to the next person or to a random person. And I remember playing that one time, and it just,
your brain broke.
Well, it's hard to keep up. It's one of those things is I loved Tetris when it came out. I've played a lot of Tetris in the 80s, or maybe 1990. I played a lot of it, and I liked the fact it was slow, and it was, you could take your time, you could relax, you could plan ahead, you could do all that stuff. I cannot imagine doing something like that at high speed. That just, that's mind-boggling.
It's a high octane gaming.
I gotcha. So, okay, but I want to go to this professional league thing, because what that means to me, and I've seen people do this. Okay, so there's two sides of this coin. One of them is there's a lot of money involved for the participants, but there's also a tremendous amount of viewership of these, and then advertising and all the things that go along with lots of people watching other people do things. So if you are a young person, male or female, I would guess, doesn't make any difference, does it? Playing these games, you can become a professional game person, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We've seen that a lot, and I think you talked about the money side of it. I was looking earlier. It's something like $1 billion industry in 2020, and they're expecting year-over-year growth of like 25% in this, which is just a phenomenal amount of money. And you're right, it's obviously lucrative if you're very, very good as a player. But I think the reason the money flows in is because it's lucrative for these companies to be gaining access to all of the players that are playing these games, not competitively, not professionally, I guess, and just kind of casually, but getting their attention.
Right. So these guys play professionally. And so are there like leagues and seasons? Like there'll be, I don't know, there's 12 teams in the whatever league, and they play each other round robin over the course of 12 weeks. And then there's like a championship tournament, and then a Super Bowl of, can I say that, Zach? Can I say Super Bowl?
Yes.
Oh, whew, good. I know a lot of people to call it the big game. So sorry, I didn't take trademark law.
I don't need to go in that rant.
All right, that's fine. So there are leagues, right? And there are championships, and there are teams and players, and I'm sure that there's league rules, and people move from team to team. Am I right on that?
You're right all across the board. Yeah. It's been kind of interesting to see all the different games take different approaches to those leagues and that professional scene. So, for example, Overwatch set up what they called the Overwatch League, and it was actually a franchise system similar to what you'd see for NFL, where you had established teams that were guaranteed slots in the league. So every year, the same 12 teams. I think they had a relegation system similar to the Premier League. So the bottom teams had some turnover, but you had a lot of guarantee. That is contrasted to other scenes like League of Legends and other stuff where there's a lot more kind of whoever's good at the year gets to keep participating, and if you're bad, you disappear. A little more cutthroat.
Yeah, so there's the difference between like the team or the organization, the group of 5, 7, however many players it may be, and being guaranteed a spot, but necessarily it's not those 5 players. It's the team name of the Green Bay Packers Esports or the Buffnagle Esports is owning that right in the league, and then they can change out freely whoever they want and bring in the best talent consistently.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of the uniqueness of the franchise system that the Overwatch went with. Um, Yeah, and then what else? I mean, the grassroots level as well, so you're kind of building up. Yes, you've got this tip top league that's like the 6 best or the 5 best players on 12 teams, but how do you find new talent? And so there's all kinds of B League and C League, and then you're seeing professional or college collegiate esport teams and with scholarships and a really fascinating story there.
Well, it seems fascinating because we look at it like I know if I told my father, who is in his mid 80s, that people paid that people paid money to advertise on places where other people watch people play video games, he would. The word scoff is not rich enough for what his reaction would be, but I mean, it's not something I don't think I do, but I mean, how is that any different than going to watch the Cardinals play the Cubs in baseball on a Saturday afternoon? It's people doing something at a very high level, and there was always, since the beginning of time, there has always been a market for watching people do things at a high level.
Exactly, and that's definitely what's drawn me to it. Like I said, I played League of Legends casually and not very well, but that appeal of watching people be good at things is really something that's always drawn me to whatever I'm watching. It's like, why watch, people be casual when you can watch the best of the best and really change the game?
Yeah. So now, if I started talking about, I guess I'll call them sports in North America, we got 4 major leagues in sports. You got NFL, you got the NBA, you have Major League Baseball, and you have the NHL. And people would argue that maybe Major League Soccer's in there as well, and there's some other leagues that are doing different things. Zach would point to Major League Rugby, and but there are things out there. Okay, but the NFL, without question, is I don't want to say the bully because I'm not necessarily sure they're a bully. They're the king. All right. And is there one of these leagues or one of these games that is the king, or is there so much variety that it's really hard to determine who's the big guy?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure I have a great answer for it. I think League of Legends is probably one of the more established of those kind of 5 versus 5 teams with a big league and that kind of thing. They've been doing it, like I said, since the early 2010s, so they might be in like their 11th or 12th season possibly by now. But I know in terms of raw prize money, Fortnite has definitely got some big numbers to offer. Dota 2.
Yes, I pulled up the information as far as numbers. If you want to talk about just pure monetary value, the total prize pool in the most recently played international, which is the Dota 2 championship, was over $34 million.
So the prize money in the championship, was that a tournament or a league or a?
That was a singular tournament held over the course of a week or 2.
All right, and so what do you know? Like do you know how many people? Like, is that a big like 60,000 teams or
I think it was a total of 15 or 16 teams.
And they split amongst those 15 or 16 teams. They split essentially $2 million on average, $2 million a team.
But I think it's like 50% goes to the winning team.
Right. And that winning team would be a group of 5 individuals, but it goes to the sponsoring team, just like in auto racing and all those things, right? There are the players, and I'm sure there's the sponsoring team that provides all the equipment and all the salaries and the training and all that other stuff, right?
Yes and no. So
Okay,
let's
Zach.
use the Dota Invitational as an example. Let's call it $20 million prize pool. The players competing in that tournament are representing Buffnagle Esports, the organization. We're paying our players a salary or something of the like, and we can make an agreement with the players. If you win this tournament, we'll take 20% of your individual winnings, or depending on the organization, it could be zero. So it's a very individual, organizational based exchange for when there's big payouts. Those teams sometimes they're just comfortable, like, hey, we got top 3, we did really good, we put our name and our brand out there, people are going to recognize us, we don't need anything else. That sometimes itself is worth the not getting any monetary payback from the players, because they're getting so much viewership on Twitch and things of the nature where their name is cycling and circulating, that they're going to gain traffic that way.
So who are these teams then? Is it like, it's not like McLaren Motorsports. It's these are media companies or gaming companies or podcasts. All the above?
It's a mix. I think originally, kind of as the scene was growing up, there were a lot of esports clubs and esports groups. I mean, they were doing their own thing and saying like, we think this is going to be big, so we're gonna make it happen. So you had teams, Team Solo Mid, Dignitas, Counter Logic Gaming, the list goes on. But just companies you'd never heard of because all they did was esports. As this got big, especially I think in the last 5 years, you've started to have buy-in from more traditional sports, I guess you would say. So, for example, for the Overwatch League with the franchise system, I think something like half of the franchise slots ended up being bought by owners of large traditional sports franchises.
Wait, so like the Chicago Bears would have a Dota team?
Absolutely, yeah.
And Zach, what would we know about a Chicago Bears Dota team?
They still suck.
They would still suck, right? Okay. So large. So like, do you know like who owned what? Like,
Yeah, I'm actually trying to pull up the list real quick, but owners of like the Boston, I don't know my traditional sports
The
teams.
Brooklyn Nets, I believe, made a pitch for a team, as did the owners of the Vancouver Canucks for the
Yeah,
Overwatch League.
I know the Golden State Warriors have a professional league or professional League of Legends team that actually is called the Golden. It's not the Golden State Warriors, but it's something very similar. And so yeah, there's been a lot of buy-in from the traditional side of this.
wow, that's incredible. And to buy a franchise in one of these things, is this like an NFL franchise will cost you like $1 billion? I mean, some ungodly amount of money. But is this the kind of thing you can get in for what? For $10 million, for $100,000, for $50 million? What do we know what these franchises cost?
I don't think it was ever made public for the Overwatch League, but I saw rumors of around $20 million for some of the franchise slots, and back in probably 2019. In fact, I have pulled up the list here. So the Kraft Group, Robert Kraft,
That's the Patriots.
the Patriots, and the New England Revolution is the owner of the Boston Uprising.
Okay.
Kroenke Sports, which is they own the Rams, the Nuggets, and Arsenal Football Club. They have the Los Angeles Gladiators. The Canucks owns the Vancouver Titans. Yeah, so you can see where it's the old league. So we have like NRG and who else was in here? Misfits Gaming. These are some of those more past historic esports leagues or esports groups, and now you also have the traditional side.
So at least in sports leagues where they actually play in a physical location, there's ticket sales and there's stadia, and so you pay to watch these things. You can actually physically go to watch some of these things, or you can watch them online. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So I can maybe use the Overwatch League because I've followed it a little closely. So they all the games were streamed for free. You could always just watch the games for free on Twitch or on YouTube. And there was ads. Obviously, that's how they're monetizing that. I think they had like a premium streaming tier that you paid some kind of subscription. Maybe it was monthly or for the season or something like that. Um, and that gets you access to additional cameras and in-game commentary and coverage, I think. Uh, Potentially cuts down on some of the advertising, though I don't know if that's actually true. Um, and then also, you're right, the in-person aspect. So for the first 2 years of the Overwatch League, all of the teams played in Los Angeles. They had booked up one of the old studios out there and renovated it into this Overwatch stadium, essentially. I actually did go see a game in person there with my
All
brother.
right.
It was pretty fascinating. And yeah, so that was the first couple years, and the plan was always that they would transition to a home stadium, and each of these teams would build out their own uh, place to play. They were all tied to places, so like the Toronto Defiant, the Philadelphia Fusion, that kind of thing. Um, I think the pandemic has probably had some impact on the timeline of that, but that is the plan to kind of transition to this home and away model.
Wow, this is becoming fascinating and fascinating. Okay, there's a couple things that popped into my head, and I'll say them kind of, and you address the ones that you. This is kind of the rapid fire piece, all right? So, I'll give them to you. I'll give them to you, and you address the ones you want to address. Okay, injuries, all right, because this is you do physical stuff. I'm thinking like carpal tunnel syndrome, but I'm also thinking like seizures or getting your eyes wacky, stuff like that. Players unions, all right, as soon as you get together, collective bargaining and players unions, and then things like network traffic and like regional places. Like how does this work globally when the computing to me is I had problems with my internet yesterday at my office, just sending files back and forth and doing multi-million dollars worth of competitive gaming. I think that's got to be really high on the list. So take your pick.
Sure. Let's do them in reverse order, maybe. So for the networking list there, yeah, definitely you need fast internet, you need reliable internet, and you need low latency, right? You don't, the time between you clicking and that being registered in the game has to be very short or things get out of hand pretty quick. For a lot of the professional, like the really high dollar stuff, it's going to be in person and it's going to be wired. And essentially there's no latency because you know, you're 10 feet from the server. Um, and so that's how they kind of manage that issue, that scene. But there is a space, and especially I think with the pandemic, we've seen it become more important for online, like network-based gaming, and to do it really competitively, not just kind of casually. And yeah, I think it's something they just have to manage. I know with StarCraft, you'd sometimes see there were kind of three major regions for StarCraft. So you had North America, you had Europe, and you had South Korea. Um, because South Koreans are very, very good at
Yep.
StarCraft, and they have very fast internet. And you'd see sometimes some tournaments, if like a player wanted to play from South Korea to North America, you'd actually alternate the host of the server. So one game would be played on the North American server, one game would be played on the South Korean server to kind of trade off the disadvantage of even just a couple hundred milliseconds of latency there.
Well, 100 milliseconds, that doesn't seem like very much, but that's a tenth of a second. And that's the kind of thing that you start, when people talk about a delay in conversation, you're getting in there with a couple hundred milliseconds. You can detect that just in conversation between two people. So what about injuries and then like players unions or collective bargaining and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So injuries, definitely something they have to watch out for. I know with a lot of these professional organizations, you have the teams will live together in a house, again, a team house, and they'll have on the staff for the organization, they'll have dietitians, they'll have exercise coaches, and they'll kind of go through a routine. It's a scheduled day for them that obviously includes a lot of playing video games, but also it includes working out and staying in shape, and eating healthy and that kind of thing. So I think the image of, a bunch of guys in a house with junk food everywhere and all that kind of thing is a little outdated, perhaps, especially at the professional level, just because the teams recognize that, I mean, if they're not protecting what are essentially their assets, then they're they're risking something there.
So the house is not filled with Diet Mountain Dew cans and Harry lounging around eating Cheetos. So
Wait, okay, I don't drink it out of a can. My Diet Mountain Dew right now is in a styrofoam cup. All right, so leave me alone. All right, so but yeah, you got to imagine that being in good shape, it's helpful for everything you do. So it's going to help with this sort of thing. Is there any discussion of collective bargaining or union things? Whenever you get big money and you start having contracts and you start having leagues, whether the team wants to take 20% or 50% or 0% of the revenue, there's got to be a way to bargain that. And I guess my guess is that seems like that's got to be coming.
Yeah, I think I don't know too much on this. I think it's been discussed. I'm not aware of any organized unions for the players so far. I think Overwatch has had some discussion of like a players association. I don't know if that would be something that has like full on collective bargaining powers, but at least something to represent their interests at the table with the professional business side of it, I guess. Um, yeah, like I said, I'm not too familiar here, but I do think there's definitely that you're right that it's going to grow.
yeah, I actually kind of know about this. Imagine the guy that goes to law school and likes esports
Well,
and things.
I was hoping you'd come in on this. Yeah, go ahead.
So it is, yes, trending in that direction. Especially because a lot of these kids, like we mentioned earlier, are 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who don't have a lot of life experiences and don't understand the contractual agreements that they are agreeing to. So that it puts them in a situation where they're not going to be taken advantage of, so that they can be protected. Their interest in playing professionally is all, together. I think it also is going to be an interesting thing if these things start going, is that player pool that Eli talked about earlier with those lower and lesser leagues, like grassroots efforts. Those could become more organized as well, and there will be pathways to professional playership, which will make it
like a farm system in baseball.
Yeah, it would be like, you start and you can achieve success in the Buffnagel League, and you can compete in the Buffnagel League at as early as 14. Yes, you're not a professional player, but puts you on the track. So by the time you turn 18, you're familiar with the system, you signed into the union, and then by signing into the union, you can have access to playing professionally with these other teams.
Yeah, can I jump in here as well?
Yeah, go.
So that's something that some games have even kind of codified into the game itself. And so with like all of these games, when you join the queue and like the three of us are playing together, we get a rank and we'll be kind of like we're gold league. And then as you play more, you get better and your rank goes up from gold to platinum to they've all got their systems. And a lot of the games, I know Overwatch, I think Hearthstone as well, the top league, which goes by a ton of different names, is very small, maybe 100 players. And the idea is that that's a great pool for these professional esports teams to start looking at for potential candidates outside of whoever's already playing professionally.
This is fascinating stuff. How many? I'm going to ask a couple things because I think we're getting a little tight on time. Like numbers of people number of kids. I guess mostly kids, but I guess there's not a lot of 60-year-olds doing this. I bet there are some. How big is this pool? We have 330 million Americans. There's a zillion people around the world. How many people are involved in this kind of thing? I heard the keyboard clicking.
I'm trying to pull up some numbers here exactly. So let's see, League of Legends, 32 million players per month in a month. So that's a lot.
That's unique. That's unique.
Yes.
Individuals. It's not logins. That's individuals.
Yes, that's individuals.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That seems like a big number.
Yeah, I may have potentially pulled up a number from 2012, so that might be very out of date.
Wow, it might even be bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've actually pulled up some numbers here. So we've got in 2021, I'm seeing 115 million active monthly users for League of Legends internationally.
And these are people that you just kind of sign in, you make a username, and you're good. These aren't paying people, right?
Yeah.
You don't pay for this.
Exactly.
And then they play. And if you get good enough, then you can people would notice you and they would say, hey, we'd like you to be on our team or something like that. Now, do you guys know any of these people? Harry, I think you said don't you know somebody who's a person that people tend to watch?
About 2 years ago, I started following a person named Voxy on Twitch. She plays Magic the Gathering. She started off, I first started watching her, probably 40 or 50 viewers on average. She now averages probably somewhere between 550 and 800 viewers per stream, like throughout the stream. So that's people coming in and then dropping off. And I think that's where a lot of individuals, get revenue from if we're talking about monetization. And then I think while Eli was looking up concurrent numbers of players, you also have things like concurrent numbers of players watching events. So, for example, sometime last year, Epic Games, the creators of Fortnite, reported 10 million concurrent viewers during an in-game event.
10 million. So, okay, that's not quite the Super Bowl, but that's a lot of eyeballs, and that's a lot of opportunity for advertising. So with this lady gamer that you watch, she streams her games on Twitch, and she makes money through revenue if people are watching, right? I mean, so she has monetized her stream. Is that right?
And a lot of people on Twitch either do that through ad revenue on the stream from viewers coming in, or you can buy a subscription, which is basically ad-free viewing for the stream. And then Twitch gets some percentage of that, and the viewer gets some percentage of that, and everyone's happy.
All right, Eli. No, Zach.
Okay, so we talked earlier about number of players playing League of Legends. Just so we know, there are 4.5 million registered rugby players in the world. So just for a comparative sake of oranges to apples.
Yep.
This thing is a growing phenomena, and it's probably here to stay. So get used to it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So this is here to stay. This is not a fad. What I'll let you finish on this. What is what's coming next? What's next for esports? Where do you see it going?
I think the thing that esports has always had to deal with is accessibility, in terms of how do you bring someone in who's never played the game and start watching something. Because a lot of them, like if you think of trying to explain soccer, or maybe baseball is not the best example, but some basketball, some of these sports, you can get the basics down pretty quick. There's a few rules, and then you kind of there's your nits and the exceptions, but for the most part you get it down. If you sat someone down with a League of Legends stream, it could take hours to really like explain what's going on, and then like what to appreciate, like what's even good, what's bad, that kind of thing. And so I think that's something they've had to iterate on. And I think the battle royale genre has helped. I think it's a much more accessible idea of like there's 60 people and the last one standing wins and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think in terms of moving forward, I'm really fascinated to see what changes on the genre side of things and how we kind of approach it and are able to spread the word and kind of make it more accessible to more people and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that is something I see in whenever I watch people playing the game. I'm like, well, what are you doing? How do you know if it's going well? It just seems to me you're clicking all over the place, and I just see these lights of flashing around, and somebody will get real excited. And I'm like, what happened? To me, it's like watching immigrants to the United States watch American football. They're like, what's going on? Why are you so excited? And but I think you're saying it's even harder than that to learn. Zach, where do you think it's going?
I think it is currently in a bubble because of the amount of money that is going into it, but I don't think it's a fad that's going to like crash and burn when it's all said and done. I think people are making the smart, intelligent decisions now to put the safety net in place so that this thing can have long-lasting success, especially as computing technology and games getting more stronger and more interactive games and things like that. It's going to be a thing that's going to be present in mainstream media for years and years to come.
Yeah, it's really interesting because when I look back on my childhood and movies about the future, there's always these people watching on TV some sort of holographic game of some competitors that are living worlds apart, and we're there, right? Whatever that future that was coming is here now with some of those things. I don't really see it as dangerous. I just see it as an opportunity for people to compete. People love to compete. It's a pretty safe thing to do, I would guess. Although I'm sure that there's some nefarious activity here and there. We didn't get the opportunity to discuss whether or not the mob is involved and whether any of these things are ever rigged. But maybe we'll leave that for another time. Maybe we'll talk Eli into coming back on sometime if he would like, and maybe fill us in on some other things. Zach?
That sounds all fantastic. So Eli, thank you for coming on. We appreciate your thoughts, your insight, and it's always good to catch up with you. So again, thank you all for listening. Go seek the good, be the good, and spread the good. Enjoy the adventure of life.